Nobodies are somebodies.
All right, hey kids, welcome to Nobodies radio station. It is me, Chad Weiss, and I thank you so much for tuning in. And if you happen to be listening to this interview on Nobodies Are Somebodies podcast at a later date, no music inside of this show, as of course with licensing that is not possible, but I encourage you to listen to this when it does replay on Nobodies radio station on Mixcloud on the app. We can have the music and the talk in there when that goes online, and you can find that at mixcloud.com/Nobodies radio station. I have a great conversation with White Trash singer and main man Dave ALVIN. We go into a great detailed history of the band. We start at the beginning, of course, through the making of their debut record, the second record, COCK, when Dave was working with different musicians at that point, and how that record came together, leaving the music business, being in the film industry, and coming back to music and how that all came about. It's a great long conversation. I hope you'll sit back and enjoy the ride with me. I thank Dave so much for his time and his energy and putting up with all my questions and just getting to know him and the band, and I hope you will too here. And we're going to play some songs from the first three records as well, mixed in with this too. And I got to give a big shout out to my unpaid promoter Maurice for helping to set this all up, and she put the wheels in motion. She reached out to Dave after he liked one of our Paradise City Facebook pages, one of the episodes where we played one of his songs, where we played one of the White Trash songs, The Crawl, I believe it was, several weeks back. Dave responded to that, and Maurice reached out to him, and here we go. We have an interview, and that's why I have this opportunity to present that to you. So shout out to her, and of course Dave himself, and let's get to know a lot about the band. Here we go, here on Nobodies radio station, Heavy Rock Radio. All right, this week on Nobodies radio station, I'm being joined by Dave ALVIN, singer of the band White Trash. It's a pleasure to talk to you, Dave, and find out more about the band that I discovered maybe about 10 years ago, which was way too late from when the party first happened, but never too late to discover good music. Dave, how are you doing?
Good, I'm hanging in.
That's good to hear. I wanted to obviously talk to you about the band, and that's a big part of your career, but there's a couple of things I wanted to touch on first if we can. I know when Maurice reached out to you, there was on your profile it talked about you being a film student in San Francisco. I want to talk to you about that, I guess, kind of shift in your career outside of music. Talk to me a little bit about how you got into that and kind of where that took you in your life.
Yeah, well, after doing, the first couple of White Trash records, at a certain point, I decided, I was going to retire from music, and, as a young kid, and, I had some money, and I was like, I'm done. I'm just going to go retire. And then I kind of, for the next, 5 years or so, was involved with film and, trying to find myself and try different forms of, creative expression and whatever. Mm-hmm. And I wound up going to San Francisco Art Institute. I got into the master's degree program there. And that's like a very experimental film program. It's not really like Hollywood movies. It's more like, like video art installations and David Lynch films and stuff.
All right, okay, I got you.
So that's the kind of filmmaking I was interested in. And I lived in San Francisco for about 3 years. And, I was part of that scene for a little while. I, showing at places like Other Cinema, which was a cool place, and worked with a lot of good, famous, underground filmmakers and stuff. So it was a really cool, period, because I was, really into film, and I got to make a lot of films and videos and stuff. So it was like a strange branch off the tree of life there, where I just went off and did something completely different.
Well, sometimes you need that change of pace, especially when you get out of the music and you want to do something different. You want to have kind of something it could be similar if you're talking about music videos and stuff like that, and we'll get into that too as well. Would this have been the mid-90s, early 2000s, I guess, when the band broke up the first time?
So what happened, let's see. So, the first band disbanded in 1992, but White Trash made a second record, but it was me and a lot of different musicians.
COCK?
So we did that record. And kind of like by the time that record came out, as like a lot of people talk about from that time, the scene changed kind of dramatically with the grunge scene. And we weren't really a part of that scene. So, we kind of got one of these forgotten bands.
Yeah.
And we kind of got lumped in with all the hair metal bands and stuff. So, we toured with that record, but by the end of it, I was kind of discouraged, and that's kind of when I decided to stop being in White Trash.
Mm-hmm. So,
at that point, I did, Jon Stewart had a TV show, and I did music for him.
The Crawl, yeah.
Well, originally it was The Crawl, and then what happened is he got a second show.
Oh, okay.
And my publisher wouldn't give rights to The Crawl, so I wrote him like a separate song that was very similar to
Okay.
The Crawl. And so that was like what I thought was going to be my final music venture. So
Yeah.
I cashed out on that. I was like, I'm good. I got a bunch of money. I'm going to retire at 25. So that would have been around 1995, I guess.
Right.
And that's where my music journey paused
Mm-hmm.
for a while.
Are you still currently right now doing film or film work? You're not in San Francisco anymore, you're back in New York, correct?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was out there for a while, and it was like a good, change of direction, and kind of had different experiences, and it was a very important part of my life. But ultimately, I missed New York, and I wanted to come back to New York. And, that led to White Trash getting back together.
Right, exactly, and I definitely want to touch on that period too. One more thing outside of the music as well too, and I read this a while back. I'm not sure if you're still doing it. The nonprofit that you had for the homeless people of New York, are you still involved in that?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't my nonprofit, but I spent a lot of time working with the homeless population in New York, mainly Brooklyn and Queens.
Mm-hmm.
I'm from Queens, but
right.
We also did the Coney Island area. So, yeah, that was. I'm surprised you know that. You know more about me than I forget all these things.
Well,
but,
I'll tell you why in a second too, and we can talk about that too. But yeah, I'll keep going on that.
Okay. So I was involved with that. I won't get into the specifics of why or anything, but I was kind of forced out of that. But
Okay.
not for any behavior or anything. It was just, unfortunately, everything, whether it's the music business or social work or whatever it is, there's a business component. Sometimes
Right.
you have to go your separate ways. But I do believe Common Ground is still serving the homeless population, and they did do a good job.
What year did you first get involved with them? How did you end up joining the?
Well, again, there was many years there where I was sort of just drifting, just trying different things,
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of got to a point where I was thinking about, helping people and trying to give back. And when I found this organization, at the time they were operating out of Williamsburg in New York, and I had moved to Greenpoint, which is right next door to Williamsburg. So, I just kind of jumped in. I didn't know a whole lot about it, but basically, we traveled around, and we would scour the streets. We try to find homeless people and try to get them into shelters, especially in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
And it was it was one-on-one. We were out on the streets, interacting, and it was very difficult thing. But it's a real learning experience to see how some other people live and what their experiences are.
Yeah, for sure. There's nothing like people can talk about it all day and say they want to help or they have ideas from helping behind, an office or a computer screen, or they just send money and that's it. But to actually go on the streets and actually get down in there and talk to people and actually get involved and see what their day-to-day conditions are and actually, kind of spend that time with them, that's something you can't replicate anywhere else. That's amazing that you did that.
yeah, it was a good experience, and I'd recommend anybody, everybody should take at least some time out of their life to try to help other people.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely good words, and people should definitely try to do what they can and do what you can, and that's really all that matters.
Yeah,
and just
exactly.
have empathy and realize, there's other people out there that you think you might be bad. There's always people that may have it worse, so just do what you can.
Yeah, totally.
Going back to something you just said, how I know so much about your career. Let me just tell you exactly what I do know about the band and about, I guess, the music, and then we can kind of start back at the beginning for White Trash. I discovered the band thanks to the internet, like you discover all the bands. Of course, when you guys were starting out, I was definitely on this planet, but I was way too young to have experienced it the first time. So, of course, with the internet, you can discover, and then with the advent of YouTube specifically, you can find bands that, if you like this, you may like that. And that's how I discovered, obviously, Apple Pie, The Crawl, and the first record. But as well, when I was also finding out about the band and the music, I also found, because I used to be a huge fan of this site, and I used to read a lot of the interviews that they would do because they were ball-busting interviews, and you may know what I'm talking about already, but you did the one Yeah, Metal Sludge with Stevie Rochelle, yeah. So when I was getting into White Trash, I read that interview back then, and I went back again this week to kind of refresh myself because I hadn't checked it out since then, but I know that was where I got to learn about your band a lot more and about you specifically, so that's kind of where that came up.
Oh, yeah. I had done an interview with them, and also our original guitar player who passed away also did an interview with them.
Right, yours was kind of a response to, I think, the first one with Ethan, is that correct?
Yeah, so he had done one, and that was at a time when we weren't all talking. Not like we weren't talking like we hated each other, it was just, I lived in California, and somebody actually told me, like, oh, Ethan did a Metal Sludge interview.
Yeah,
and
what's that?
Like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to get trashed. But he didn't. But, I mean, so worried, like, because either way the band broke up, everybody, hated me, basically. But no, his interview was great. I loved it, and actually gave me, like, some confidence that, like, oh, all right, maybe these guys don't hate me.
Right. It's not as bad as you thought it might be.
Right.
When you something I've always wanted to know about that too as well. I know before Stevie came out, he before it was mentioned that he was the one running it. I know he had to because he had business partner issues and he had no choice to come out with it. But was this before you knew that he was the one running it? Did they just reach out to you and said, "Here's a bunch of questions. We're gonna kind of bust your balls a bit, just kind of write them back," or how did you?
Well, so what actually happened was, so a little before this, I mean, after Ethan had done it. But I was now back in New York. Me and Aaron, the original bass player, and who was Ethan's brother, we hooked up, and then we did a reunion show at this place out in Long Island. It was a big rock club called Crazy Donkey, and we did this reunion show, and I was kind of surprised. I was like, oh wow, people remember us,
Yeah.
because it was so soon after, we decided to make another CD, and so when we were doing that, I was trying to be like the one man, like, well, how do you get press and stuff? So I actually reached out to Stevie, and I was like, hey, you had done a 20 questions with Ethan, and we're back together, and
right.
There's more stuff going on, and I kind of asked if he would be interested in doing another one. So he did, which was really nice.
So you knew Stevie was running it by this point. You knew it was him, the one doing them, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know there was a timeline there where he was kind of using different names, and a lot of the artists that he interviewed would do it, and then when they found out it was him, a lot of them wouldn't do it, and then the things changed. But I know before it was really, it's where I got to know a lot of these bands was from Metal Sludge, so it's a very important site to me, or it was anyway back in the day for sure.
No, it definitely wasn't. It's funny, my friend Anthony, who was in this New York band, the Ops, and he was in this band Dig, you might have heard of, and Nobodies, drummer. And he used to follow Metal Sludge, sorry. And he used to always tell me, oh, you got to check this out, or like whatever. So I kind of knew about it through him. And we always, we were a big part of that scene way back in New York, starting in the 80s and stuff. So, there's always like, even though I wasn't actively part of that scene anymore, and like neither is he, like it's always like cool to reminisce, and then you'd be like, oh, this guy's doing that or whatever. So he turned me on to that. So yeah, it definitely was like kind of a site that like kept it alive, like
Some people took it seriously, some people took themselves too seriously, but it was really good at getting a lot of those bands on the map, and for me personally, it helped me kind of really discover a lot of these artists too, so it's really cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. And just for the record, I was kind of one of the ones, when I did the interview with them, definitely didn't take it too seriously. Yeah. It wasn't like a diss at all, but I mean, some answers I had were like,
yeah,
bullshit.
Exactly. I could kind of tell, because I know when they did the rate the singers thing, and you gave Stevie the 10 out of 10, and you kind of gave everyone else the average rating. I knew then, hopefully, yeah. I think he gets it.
Well, the funny thing I remember about that,
nothing against Stevie's singing. I'm just saying that it's just funny.
Right when I was totally kissing his ass.
Exactly.
But I remember that. I remember but I had been so out of the loop that a lot of the singers I wasn't even really sure who they were.
Right.
So I wouldn't hold me to any of those ratings, because I might actually listen to some of those dudes and be like, wow, that guy's a lot better than me.
Yeah, he's a lot better than the 5.625 or whatever you gave.
Whatever.
Certain people,
it's kind of like, I was, trying to be funny with some of it. Actually got a little annoyed with some of the things I said, but I was just having a good...
That's the thing, people take it too seriously, and some of the bands, they take it too seriously, especially when they get those questions emailed to them, they get offended by it, and it's not meant to do that, and then everyone who got it, so yeah, it's just entertainment, it's all just rock and roll.
Yeah, no, he did a good job of keeping it fun and sort of, and he, sometimes he took like a shot at somebody or kind of goofed on you, but I don't think, it didn't come across as mean-spirited to me, so.
That kind of got me involved with getting to know White Trash, the band, but now I want to hear it from you. Let's go back to the start if we can. I know a lot changed between the first and the second record, as you mentioned, and as we know. Talk to me about, I guess, getting together originally before, I guess, the late 80s, early 90s. When did the band start, and how did you... I know sometimes this is a mundane question. Some guys like to answer it. Some have different answers, but the band name itself, White Trash, how did you come up with that? And talk to me about the formation.
So, the band name... there was a movie called Poor White Trash.
Yes. Okay.
With Timothy Carey and I think Peter Graves from Mission Impossible's in it. It's like, and my dad, I latched onto it, and he was like, "You guys are calling yourselves Po White Trash," but his whole thing was that it shouldn't be poor, it should be Po.
Po.
Like, with the apostrophe, so it was like slang.
Yeah.
And then, I brought it to them. And so at that time, like cool band names were like Motley Crue, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like White Trash was kind of like a similar, it was 2 words and, like a phrase that you already knew of. And it was like, so we latched onto that. And then, it's funny because all these years later, like White Trash, because of all the, politics and everything now. But at the time, it was just like, we're White Trash. Like, to us, it was the same thing as, like, NWA.
Yeah.
Sort of, taking, the insult and kind of turning it upside down. Like, because we used to, we were from Queens.
Right.
And for us, like, the big venues, at the time, there were plenty of venues in Queens and Long Island and stuff, but New York City is New York City. So we used to go and play in the city, and, we felt like they all thought we were like hillbillies.
Right, coming from outside the city, yeah.
So, it was kind of like a badge of honor that, like, that's right, we're White Trash, and we're here to, like, take your women and take your beer, and we're going to blow you guys off the stage.
Yeah.
And that's, kind of why we embraced that name. And, but the way we got together is, me and Ethan and Aaron and the original drummer, Buzz, we all lived across the street from each other. So, like, we had grown up, playing baseball together and going to school together.
Right.
So we all got into heavy metal, and like, Ethan was the elder statesman, turned us on to all this music, like, and, it was a lot of, like, progressive rock stuff, too, and James Brown, like, all kinds of music, but when we were teenagers, heavy metal was the thing, and that's how you got the girls.
Right.
So, we were total posers. I had bleach blonde hair and, spikes and cowboy boots, just like, wanting to be Motley Crue, wanting to be Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
Until we kind of found our own voice.
Well, that would come on. We're talking about the four original, you four guys. This is before you guys decided to add the badass brass section, correct?
Right. So what we would do, like when we would play, is we always had like some kind of performance aspect to what we were doing. Like, I was a big fan of Wendy O. Williams, so I used to smash TVs on stage.
Wow. We
used to buy pizzas and give them to the audience. We'd give the audience money to cheer. Like openly on stage. Like,
nice.
Here's money.
Yeah.
So we were like kind of comedy mixed with, heavy metal.
Right.
And then we started trying stuff. For a while, we had like backup singers. We had this all-girl backup singers called the Love Dogs. And then, we were influenced by a lot of different stuff. And I was like into Albert King, who's like a guitar player.
Mm-hmm.
And he always had these great horn arrangements on his tracks. So I wanted to do that, and then we were also into the Blues Brothers movie, and so we kind of said, hey, well, let's see what happens if we bring in the horns, and Aaron had all these horn players in band class at his high school, so he asked them to just come to one of our shows. And they became, our horn section. And once we started doing that, we realized it was more than a gimmick, like having that other instrumentation to add to our arrangements, really created something unique. So, that was it. We were like, this is it. Let's do it.
Right. Yeah, because the only kind of band around that time frame might have been who were doing something like that style, or at least the most popular anyway, would have been probably Extreme, maybe some of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, obviously. I know Blood, Sweat, and Tears was an influence, but there wasn't a whole lot of that going on, especially in the early 90s.
No, so, the cool thing that I liked about the 80s going into the beginning of the 90s is that, you had all these genres, but it kind of was areas where they blended together.
Mm-hmm.
People weren't like, oh, I'm a metalhead, or I'm into, new wave, or we were into everything. You know what I mean? So one night the club that had heavy metal, the other night it was new wave, and we would go both nights. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so we were pulling a lot of influences from a lot of different kind of music, and I think Peppers did that as well. And so Aaron and Mike, who was the second but the drummer on the first album, they got really into the Chili Peppers, and they are a very similar kind of rhythm section, and,
with the big bass and everything.
Whereas Ethan was really into Eddie Van Halen and stuff, but he also liked a lot of progressive stuff like ELP, so he kind of brought that in. And then I was trying to bring in blues and Aerosmith and Bill Murray kind of humor. So we tried to bring in a lot of different elements, because I listen to all kinds of different music, and so do all the guys, so it's we were never 1,000% about heavy metal or hair metal. We were part of that scene, but at the time that scene wasn't so strictly defined the way it is looking back on it. We were part of that scene, but in some ways we really didn't fit into that scene.
Right, but it's true, the media and obviously record labels back then would try to kind of force you into that one hole so they could sell it to the public, is this is the kind of band you are, this is 80s or Sunset Strip rock, this is what it is. Those are terms that weren't coming around then, but they're around now. But back then everyone was under that umbrella, because that's how they could market you.
Yeah, totally, and that's what it was. We were all, at the time, good-looking guys with long hair, right, and posed out.
Yeah.
And we had we came up with Apple Pie, and they did that hit. So it was, I think it was easy for them to market us in that scene as like, this is like the hair metal band that plays funk or something.
Yeah, that has the horns and it has the brass section too. It kind of adds. So Electro Records, that was your label at the time for that record, right?
Yeah, for the first two records.
For the first two records, okay. For the first one, did they kind of, when you presented the music, when you were working on that record, did they know what kind of music you were making? Did they hear it? Did they check out the demos? Did they know it was going to be heavily influenced with the brass section as well too? Were they on board with that as far as putting it out and marketing it?
Yeah, well, so we kind of came in, like, our path putting out a record was a little different in that we actually got a publishing deal first, which you usually get that after.
Yeah.
But we played at the Cat Club in New York, and this guy Ross Elliott, who worked for EMI Publishing at the time, was the guy who really like championed us, and even though we didn't have a record deal, he got us signed to a publishing deal, and as a condition of the publishing deal, like, they were going to get us a record deal.
Mm-hmm.
And so they produced the Apple Pie video. So that was made before we ever had a record.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And the version that's in the video is it's not the album version.
I was going to bring that up, but you already said it. There you go. I knew there was a difference. I wanted to ask you if you were aware of that, but yeah, that was a different one. Do you know why that was?
Because we did the demo and we didn't have a click track.
Okay.
Did the demo, so they wanted to keep the video because everybody likes that video. It was like a homemade video. It just turned out really well. This guy, Evan Stone, made it, and he went on to do a lot of other stuff. And just everyone really liked it. And it was like a great marketing tool, and it was a big part of us actually getting the record deal. And so once we had recorded the album, and we were talking about doing a video, because videos were important back then with MTV. Mm-hmm. Everybody kept saying, like, oh, I wish we could keep this video. So then we were trying to sync up the new track, and then what we wound up doing was just remixing and remastering the demo and trying to, like, audibly match it to the album version. But if you listen to it, it's different. It's, pretty close, but it's different. It's
definitely noticeable, at least to me. And it's been a while. Honestly, it's been a while since I've seen the video version of it. But obviously, I've recently played the the album version on Paradise City, which you know because I tagged you. Yeah. Which is it just me, or is the video version slightly faster in tempo than the one on the album?
Yeah. So
okay,
that was one of the big things. So we did the demo tape just pretty much live, with overdubs.
Yeah.
But, and then when you go, and we worked with, George Drakoulias, who had just done the first Black Crowes album, and Brendan O'Brien was and he wound up producing Pearl Jam.
Yeah.
And they're both and Brendan O'Brien was also the engineer on Blood Sugar.
Yes, Magic. That's true.
So he was Rick Rubin's guy, so Rick Rubin was always in the studio when we were there.
Oh, wow.
And so, we're, again, the hillbillies from Queens, and we're like, well, let's just record it live,
Let's just do it. Go for it.
Professionalism. So we started trying to do that, but then, everybody was like, no, you got to do it to a click track, and, and honestly, they were right. We learned so much about recording from that session. We got a master class from, some of the best people in the history of rock music, from production-wise. So, at the time, we were like, oh, this is bullshit, man. We could just go in and play. And but they really taught us how to make a record. So, having said that, we liked our demos better, but because there was a certain live energy to them, and that's what we felt like the video had. It was it was raw, and that's what I think people really liked. But
I agree.
We basically took the demo, and the same guys. We had Thompson and Barbieri, who had mixed Appetite for Destruction, for Guns N' Roses. They mixed our album.
Oh wow! So you had a lot of good hands in your apple pie. Sorry for that, but yeah, but it's true.
We were so fortunate to work with all these people.
Yeah.
And so they remixed our demo, and we remastered it, and then they just put out the original video. So it's kind of funny because $500,000 spent on a record, and the $5,000 demo tape is really
it was the one that everyone saw, but it was shot pretty budgetively, right?
Yeah, like $5,000.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, the $5,000 was for the okay.
Yeah. So I mean, it was very cheap. And the second video we did from the album was The Crawl, and that one cost $100,000. So it's
what a comparison. Yeah.
A record company, then you have people with salaries, and then there's catering, and
all the people.
They have crane shots, and all of a sudden you're like, wow. Yeah,
you see the difference pretty, and that happens with a lot of times too with bands. They have the one video out there, the one that they kind of test the water with to see if it's going to hit, and then when it does, okay, now we're going to overproduce and mass produce the second one because we got to make it bigger and better than what you had for the follow up, and that's what happened here by the sounds of it.
Yeah, totally.
One more thing on apple pie. I know this has come up before, and I don't know if it's ever been asked like this, but obviously Cherry Pie came out the year before that with Warrant. Did you, when you were writing this song, was it kind of, I don't know if you've ever been asked this before, but was it kind of an answer to that? If you're sick of stale cherry pie, this is, you can try something alternative, or is it just a song you had and that it came about and you just happened to have it around the same time?
No, it was really a coincidence, and the other one was Van Halen had Pound Cake at the same time.
Right. Everyone's eating food around 91.
But they were all in the pipeline around the same time.
Yeah.
Those two songs came out before us. But no, because that was one of our older songs, Apple Pie. So we had been playing that for years, and it just so happened that Warrant came out with Cherry Pie. So
Damn. Well, I'm still releasing this pie. Not everybody likes cherry pie, so at least some people like apple. So we're gonna release
it. That's right. Maybe you like apple pie.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was a weird coincidence, though. Like I said, because also Pound Cake came out. So I guess I don't know.
Yeah. 30 years ago, everyone was hungry. I guess.
Yeah.
And then going into the second record, obviously things had changed. Was it just yourself on the second album? How did that kind of change between the first one going into COCK?
So what happened was that really right before we got signed, there was a whole volatile period where the band would have broken up if we didn't get signed.
Right.
Because everybody was not on the same page. Namely, Ethan really was not a big fan of the horns and the funk elements. He wanted to be more straight up rock, a Jake Lee kind of guy or an Eddie Van Halen kind of guy. So he was a little at odds with the direction the band took. And on the other side of it, Mike and Aaron, I don't think they really wanted to be part of any kind of hair metal thing. I mean, I'm not speaking for them, but I think they wanted to go more full towards Chili Peppers and do something a little more alternative kind of music, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
So they teamed up with this other guy from our neighborhood, this guy Seth, and they started another band called Hash, which was Aaron and Mike and this guy Seth. So, and then Ethan was going to go off and do his own, more like I said, more like a rock record, Guitar God kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
And so I was kind of
you were kind of left.
Well, where does this leave me?
Yeah.
So we had a meeting, and basically nobody said this at the meeting, but basically everyone couldn't deal with me and my ego, I guess, was the problem. And we were kind of arguing and I don't know. And so basically they kind of felt you did think of the name, with your dad, so you're entitled to keep the name. So they signed the name over to me. And they kind of just wanted to make a clean break and just go off and do their own stuff. So, then I went to the record label and basically said, well, things have changed, but now I'm white trash. And I brought in, other people, like, from my neighborhood, because that's how we replace people. We
just bring in people you live. Yeah, your neighbors come on in.
Yeah, I brought in Craig LeBlanc and Eric Broden, who had been playing with the Seth guy that Mike and Aaron went with. So there was this incestuous thing where we like swapped band members.
Yeah.
And
nowadays that's common everywhere. Back then that was something to behold.
Yeah. So I got them on board, and then we found Dave Barkow, who's the second drummer. He's really the third drummer, but he was the second drummer as far as the albums go.
Right.
And he had been in a band called Ataku, which was like they were like Latin rock. They were part of the same scene as us. He played with this guy Willie, who's a friend of mine. So it was very much like, who do we have on the Rolodex? Like,
who can I call though? Just come join me in White Trash.
We weren't going to make it like a star project or anything. So, so it was basically, everybody hates when the band lineup changes, obviously, including myself. Like, you get attached to the band you were listening to. It was a tough move to make, so I kind of made the decision that I wasn't going to try to duplicate what we did on the first record and just make it like a new record. Like, it's a new band, new record. It presents a lot of marketing problems to the record company because they want, essentially apple pie too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I basically, purposely went the other direction with it. So that caused, confusion. And then, like I said, plus the scene was changing. So, it was a weird period. But that second record was like the best experience of my life. Again, like when I talked before about like on the road of life, like going and doing something different. That experience was like, the most important like musical experience of my life, because it was so difficult to do it, to like keep the record contract and to bring new guys in and try to recreate the success that you had with the first record. It was like a real spiritual journey for me. So like, again, like I alluded to before, after all of that, I quote unquote retired because I think I was just like spent, from partying and trying so hard to like make it like a second time, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it stands on. There's some good music on there, like Minor Happiness. It's you can tell the difference in sound and style. It really fits the mid-90s vibe as you move along, but there's some good stuff on there too. And if people don't know about the first White Trash record, they should definitely check out and go deeper and look at COCK as well. One thing you mentioned that I want to go back to, you mentioned that the guys were unhappy and they wanted to kind of move on to a different style and sound. But you guys had tasted success, no pun intended, with the singles that you guys had. I'm kind of surprised they still wanted to leave, even though it may not have been up their alley musically. It was still a proven success. Like, you guys were, you had a hit on the radio on MTV. You had a major label behind you guys. I'm kind of surprised they still wanted to leave, even though they were tasting success.
I mean, I was surprised too, but there was like a lot of like personality conflicts and stuff going on, and I think we're all equally to blame for that. Like, but it kind of was like, if you were in the band, it almost felt inevitable at that point, and I think it really was like we, had been friends and playing all this time, and then it's like stuff you see in a movie. It's like suddenly like you're on MTV and you're touring and strippers are all over the place. If you want drugs, they're available. Like, whatever you know what I'm saying. It's
all in your face.
It's all cliche stuff, like every band. So like the personality conflicts and the differences of opinion really over in the middle of this. So, like, by the time we were done with the first tour, and I was talking to everybody about, like, we got to start putting together another album, yeah, I don't think anybody's heart was really in it at that point. So, in a way, I think it's better the way it went, just because I think both albums were like their own thing, and it wouldn't have been like a true White Trash record, the second record, if we all just labored through it, hating each other. It would have been very hard to do it, I think. Knowing the end of the story, that we get back together, like, it was a good period for everybody, like, for everybody to go off into their own projects, and, you know, it's just too bad that we weren't smart enough to say, like, okay, well, like, let's not abandon ship, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Let's take a break, or let's do something different, or kind of put it on hold. But then you only have so much time when you have a major label that wants a follow-up, too.
Yeah, and we were like, all, you know, like, I was probably like 22 at that time, you know, it's like...
Yeah, young guys.
You just don't know anything, really. You know?
You come to find out to learn. The title of the record, obviously, it's funny for people that don't get it. They can just spell it out and they'll get it. But it's clever in the way that it's done, though, as far as like how you did it in Spanish letters and then kind of, or a Spanish term, and then put it out like that. When people say it out loud, it's this. Did you have a long process to kind of come up with the name of the record? Did you just say, I'm just going to call it this. I don't care what it's called. It's the music that matters that's on it. How did you, the title, COCK?
I know we were like, we weren't, I can't even remember everybody who was in the room at the time, but I know there was like, we were hanging out, like drinking and stuff, and not talking about album names at all. Just, you know, being stupid. And it wasn't me. Somebody said COCK. And, you know, there's like, again, Van Halen had like OU812. And it's basically just called cock, you know?
Yeah.
And, like, even though we were, like, came from the hair metal scene, like, we always had, like, a punk sensibility, not about music, about, like, lifestyle.
Attitude.
Like, you know, we're big on, you know, we're very bad kids. And, so the idea that we could have a record hanging up in Tower Records that said cock was, like... we have to do this.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, just from where I come from, like, you'd be chicken to back out of that. So,
you better try it. You know, I dare you to call it cock.
And Electra was... Electra was actually, like, very cool with it.
Did you present it as Spanish COCK, or did you present it as COCK? Like, how did you present it to them?
Well, we wrote it out, and we showed it to them. And they, like, you know, there's that first reaction where people are like, I don't understand. Because it means, like, yes or yes what.
Yes, oh, know? Yes, what? Yeah. So
they're trying to, like, make sense of it. And we were like, say it slowly. And we had this woman,
spell it out.
You know, like COCK.
Was that Sylvia?
You know.
Did you make Sylvia say it?
What's that?
Was that Sylvia? Did you make her say it?
I don't remember. I think it was somebody from the art department.
Oh, it'd be funny if you made Sylvia say it. Okay.
And so it kind of, you know, Electra actually liked us, and you know, there was a whole one element I left out of all this. So, like, when we made the Apple Pie video and we were signed to EMI, you know, we were trying to get management and labels, and we wound up getting, as management, we got Q Prime.
Yeah.
Who is still, like, biggest managers in the world. They did Metallica, they were doing the Chili Peppers, Def Leppard, at the time Queensryche.
They're huge.
Queensryche was huge.
Yeah.
And so they took us on, and that got us to Elektra Records, and that opened a ton of doors, you know. And but what happened was, when the music scene changed, and then the band broke up, and then when Aaron and Mike went to play this guy Seth in the band Hash, they had a much more, not so much grungy, but the songwriting was much more in that alternative headspace.
Yeah, a little darker,
Yeah, so then Q Prime agreed to manage Hash, and then I was working on material, and I was bringing it into Q Prime, and they were like, not really happy with what I was doing, you know?
Yeah.
And so there was like this weird disconnect where I'm like, well, I got these huge managers, but they just keep telling me to make more demo tapes and stuff, you know what I mean?
Wow.
So I actually asked out of the contract with them, which, many people would say is a questionable move.
Yeah.
But again, like, my whole thing with that second record was much more about, like, I'm on a spiritual quest, and, like, I don't care what happens. Like, I don't care if I die in the middle of this, I'm going to make the record I want to make.
Yeah.
It was just, that's what it was.
Yeah.
And they were cool, and they were like, look, yeah, we're obviously not on the same page, and if you want to go different, they were totally cool. Like, they honored my request. I moved out. So, but what was weird was, so then they brought Hash to Elektra. And I know, like, a lot of people at Elektra kind of felt like, well, who's Hash? You know what I mean?
Right.
They spent time marketing White Trash, and now there's this other
Now you
band.
have Hash. Yeah.
And there was, like, a weird kind of disconnect. So we kind of had, like, Elektra on our side with a lot of things. But Q Prime kind of had the weight because they also had Metallica on Elektra. So, like, it was like it was a weird thing. So in a way, we had our people at Elektra that were really, like, in our corner, and were, like, super supportive. And like I said, even going to them with a crazy idea, like calling the album Cock, they let me do that. And
that's amazing.
So they were really supportive. Like, I don't really have anything negative to say about Elektra.
Well, no, that's amazing, because usually a lot of bands, if they don't hit it as big as they expect or sell them many platinum as they expect, it can be one and done. And so many bands are victim of that. It's one record and you didn't hit it, well, you're out, and they can kind of give up, especially when you lose most of the band, which you did. So the fact that you were able to keep going and you had Elektra support and they believed in you, that's a testament to your work, your creativity, and the music you were making. They got behind you and they believed in you.
Yeah, and so that's why, like, a lot of people are like, oh, I bet you hate this person at Elektra or whatever. And I'm like, no, I don't hate anybody there. Like, they were. Yeah,
that's the narrative, to hate on your old record label. Nowadays, everyone hates on. There's people that write songs about the record label, trashing them. But I mean, if they treat you well,
and there are terrible stories out there. So
it's not without reason. But
the thing was really for us is that there was almost like a 2-year gap between the two records.
Right.
Because of the lineup changes and the politics.
Mm-hmm.
And the scene had dramatically changed. And, by the time we came out, and then even, like, you're like, oh, where's Aaron? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was a tough sell. But, like, I've always been a fan of, like, like B movies and, like, that sort of maverick type filmmaking. And so I just was, basically, like, I'm just going all in on this, and it's not going to be, really White Trash Part 2.
No, it's going to be something different for sure, but it's still going to have that banner, which could work as could also hinder you too, because with the White Trash name, people might have expectation, like you said before, of Apple Pie 2 or something else that kind of can hold you back.
Yeah, I think I just felt like if at that point I just tried to make the same record with different people, that would have been so lame. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I'd be like my own guys, and it just didn't feel right. So an opportunity to, like, make a record that I wanted to make. So it was like, that's why I say it was the greatest experience of my life, because you had this budget, you had the top record studios and
people behind
and producers, and to be able to go in and really get to do exactly what you wanted to do. That really doesn't happen that often. Now, unfortunately, it wasn't that successful a record, so it's not like this fairy tale story. But for me, it was a very important thing. And so at that point, when I decided, like, okay, I'm done with this, like, I felt very fulfilled with what I did, So there was never, like, regret about any of it. It was just such a, like, White Trash first album was, like, the ultimate party, like, rock star lifestyle.
Yeah.
Like, my whole dream in life up until that point. And it was like, the second record I really, kind of had to be the guy, and it was like a huge challenge. So, it was important to me. But yeah, like I said, at the end of that, I was like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah. Before we finish off, it does have a happier ending, as you said, for the most part anyway, and we'll get to that too. But you guys did reform in, was it 2009, around 2010? When did you guys get back together and start making the 3D Monkeys in Space record?
So I alluded to before, we did a reunion show because I came back to New York. I kind of hooked up with everybody, and everybody was cool, and I think we all kind of like owned up to the mistakes we made with between each other, and we're really family. Like, I've known these guys my whole life, and it just we were able to put all that bullshit away because everybody was an adult.
Yeah.
And somebody asked us to play this show, and we did the reunion. And for me, it was basically like, you know what? I missed this. This is awesome. I talked to Aaron, and I really was like, dude, we did this work. We got together. We did a show. Like, why don't we record something? Like, why don't we keep doing this? So nobody was sure about that at first, but we decided to do it. And we did that CD, and we just kept playing, and we wound up doing Suburban Purgatory a few years later.
That was 2015, correct? I think that's your is that your latest record then?
Yeah. So then that we did that, and we were kind of in a good spot. And then Ethan passed away,
right?
Which was like a major blow. Still a major blow to everybody.
Can I ask, did that happen while you guys were on tour? Was that at a show? Was that when you guys were off the road? Well, what was the time frame when that happened?
Everybody was home.
Okay.
And it's a very sad story because he went to the hospital with chest pains, and they sent him home, and he died in the parking lot of the hospital.
Oh my God!
So,
wow.
Talk about like malpractice, and a wonderful son who lost his dad. So like that's it's so horrible.
Yeah.
Because he was just getting back into it because. Because we had two versions of the band, we've been rotating a lot of the guys through, depending on who's available.
As far as the brass guys go?
Shows, what's that?
As far as the brass section goes, there's different guys in and out?
Well, there has been different guys on the horn section, but I mean, the second guitar player, Craig, has done a lot of the shows. Ethan did a lot of the shows. Both drummers have, like we just did the Monsters of Rock cruise, and it was like a mix of both bands. It was.
Oh wow! I didn't know you guys did that. Okay, was that the
from COCK?
Was that the last one in 2020? The Monsters of Rock. Okay,
yeah, we were on the last one.
Okay, I didn't know that. Wow, that's cool.
So we had Dave and Craig from the COCK album, and then like Aaron and the horn players from the first.
I get you. So, yeah, a mix of different guys from the record. Yeah. Okay.
So, like, Ethan would, sometimes play, and sometimes Craig would play, but the reality was when Ethan died, I mean, really, like, he was our mentor, like I mentioned at the beginning. He was the guy who played us James Brown, and who played us, Yes, and who played us the Blues Brothers. Like, he turned us on to all this music. Yeah. So it really was like, our spiritual leader, left the building. So we stopped at that point because it just didn't feel right. And then, we had some downtime. I did a couple of side projects like this Bone Monkey thing, Two-Ton Turntable, and Mug Bug.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about those, yeah.
And then Aaron did Butterbrain, and he also did a project as White Owl. And, so, we just weren't doing White Trash at that time. And then, Monsters of Rock Cruise actually reached out to us and was like, hey, are you guys interested in doing the cruise? Mm-hmm. And I was like, yes. Yeah. And, but it was like the Blues Brothers because we had stopped playing. So I had to go, round everybody up, and everybody wasn't necessarily on board at first.
Get into rehearsals, get back together, and figure it out. Get the sound worked out. Yeah, so it was like
a whole thing, and then we got in the Blues, we got the band back together.
Yeah.
And since we were doing the cruise, we decided, let's do like a tribute show to Ethan. Raise some money for his family, and then go do this cruise. So we did the cruise, and it was amazing. It's great, one of the best gigs ever. Great people that run Monsters of Rock.
Yeah.
And while we were on the boat, people are talking about, COVID and all this stuff, and you're like, it's nothing.
Yeah, I remember that. Those were the days. Yeah.
And so we were like 2 weeks away of having that canceled, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Like as soon as we came back, a couple of weeks later, everything was locked down.
Yeah, that was the end of February too, and I know New York got hit pretty hard, as a lot of places obviously over the world too. But that was
and
coming
then all of a sudden, everything just got shut down, and we were lining up shows, and we were getting ready to record. Then all of a sudden, you just had a year on lockdown. So right now we're just working on a new album and just lining up some shows now that things are starting to open up. So comes next.
Are things opening up in New York? I know it was one of the tightest cities being locked down. Is your governor kind of opening things up a little bit more? Do you know? Or are things starting to relax?
Yeah, it seems like everything's starting to open up now, and
that's good to hear.
We got a couple of things lined up, but everybody, you hold your breath because you don't know what's going to happen exactly. But
don't get too excited too soon. But we all hope for the best.
I think we all need music, and obviously not to the detriment of anybody's health. But my point is, I think it's good that we can start opening up, and we're anxious to get out and start playing again before we're too old to do it.
Well, you're not there yet. You guys started pretty young. It's only been 30 years. You still got spring in your step. I'm sure you can get it done.
I hope so.
I have no doubt. Hopefully I can actually travel from where I'm at to there and get across the borders one day and actually maybe see a show. That'd be cool too. Be the first time and see what you guys are putting on. Hey, this is Chad Weiss, and I got something exciting to talk to you guys about here. I'm talking about Browork Hoffman Rockland. It's a new local brewery right here in Rockland, Ontario, Canada, right off the Highway 17. Their products are simple, clean, and consistent. It's quality beer that focuses on classic German beer styles and new world trendy beer varieties. In normal times, they have a tap room. That's right, a tap room with an original German-themed menu, along with a retail beer store for all your beer needs. So be sure to pay them a visit over on Facebook at Browork Hoffman Rockland. It's good to hear you're working on new music. Just a couple more things before I let you go. The new music, I don't know if you can talk about it. It's too early to mention. What kind of, if you had to put it in a style catalog, would it be closer to the first, the second record, the newer stuff you were doing before? Where would you kind of put it?
It's, it's so raw right now. I mean, I would say, like each thing we do is sort of a combination of what we did before, I guess it'd be similar to the last record so far, but it's hard to say because we haven't done all the arrangements and stuff. I would say there's some elements of it that are a little bit more like straight up rock, but certainly Monk and the Horns is going to be a big part of it. And
awesome.
Hopefully we can push it a little further out, like because we kind of make an attempt to make each record a little different than, so that they each kind of have their own vibe to them. So
yeah, exactly.
We're pretty early in the process right now, so it's hard to say exactly what it's going to be. But I like the material. I think there's a lot of good stuff that we're working on. So now we got to make up for lost time and get it done.
Yeah, now's the time to do it while you can. And I look forward to one day being able to spend some of those tracks and play them on the radio show and stuff like that, and just get the word out there. And people need to hear about White Trash and get back into it. If you had apple pie and slept on the rest of the records, the rest of the albums, they should go back and check it out and discover some good music. If you like this, you'll definitely like what you guys are doing. Yeah,
well, thanks for having me on, and hopefully we get a few more people digging what we're doing.
Yeah, that's what the whole goal is. That's too, because that's how I discovered it, and I want other people to do it too. One more thing I want to ask you, because you guys, you came from the New York area, another one of the bands I really got to love from that scene and that. Did you ever cross paths or know the guys in the band Spread Eagle? Did they ever come across your radar?
I don't know them. I know of them, and I think we did play together. We were actually supposed to play with them at something in Baltimore like a few years ago. There was some kind of benefit thing.
Oh, cool.
That was going on. But no, I don't know them personally.
Okay, I thought maybe you might have crossed paths in the New York area with Rob and Paul at the time.
I'm pretty sure we've played on the same nights in the same clubs and stuff. And I probably wouldn't be surprised if I did have a conversation with one of those guys, but so much of what happened back then is blurry to me that just because of
things happen.
Substance abuse and partying, and so that like this, Chris RBC is like one of our sax players, and he's never been a guy that like drinks or parties like that. And it's funny because he can recall everything that happened. Sometimes he'll just go like, "No, you were talking to that guy, and you told him that his girlfriend was ugly." And I'm like, "Oh, I remember that." Well, that something happened that I don't remember.
It's possible you run into them at some point. If you do a biography or a written autobiography, you should have him write it then for you, because then it's gonna be cohesive.
It's true.
And consistent. The Dave Alvin story, as told by.
Be like, Chris, is this what happened? Do I remember this correctly? But he remembers dates of shows and everything. He's like an encyclopedia.
That's amazing. Well, it's good you have that. You kind of like a factorial checker. You can kind of make sure you have that, and just in case it ever comes up, the Dave Alvin story, as told by Chris.
Yes.
One more thing I want to ask you about your music. Can people? I know the streaming services don't pay bands shit, and I know it's hard to kind of promote that. But if people who do use that service, if they wanted to add it to a playlist and kind of discover White Trash that way, do you know, is your music on Spotify and the other streaming services? Can people find you there?
Yeah. It is. It's on everything. Ryko Disc actually re-released the first 2 albums, and basically just digital distribution. So it's on iTunes and Amazon and Spotify and all that stuff. Yeah, we really don't get any money for that. You get something, but it's like. But I honestly, I just want people. The one thing, whether you paint or write a book or make music or whatever you do, stand-up comedy, the worst, no reaction at all, just complete indifference.
Yeah.
So to me, in some of my leaner years, that's something I came to terms with.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm appreciative, for people to just listen. It really isn't about money for us at this point. We just love to play. And, music is a gift and, part of a worldwide conversation. And, if you're a musician, you should be playing and be part of that conversation. And I think that's just like what it's about for us. It's not really about being rock stars anymore. We just like to play with each other.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about the music, and definitely people should discover it. And do you know if people can still buy physical copies out there as well for people like me who love the physical aspect, or is it just digital?
Well, actually, so the production, we are talking to a couple of people about, re-releasing stuff or re-recording stuff. So there may be some stuff coming, but we're actually
cool.
Going to start selling CDs and shirts and stuff through our website. I located like promotional copies and stuff. So we're going to try to sell some merch and like fund our next recording. But we are working on trying to do something like re-release the album, like with the original demos and, a lot of bonus material. Fortunately, like I said, the past year was kind of like a disruption in all the momentum we had.
Yeah.
But
we're getting on your feet again, and all of a sudden the world gets swept away. Yeah, it's unfortunate.
I don't know if you know the Stephen King, The Stand.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Well, there's that guy. That guy. He's like a singer, and he has like this hit song, and then the world ends.
Yeah.
So that's us. Like,
okay.
we, whatever. Like, our house was built over an ancient burial ground or something.
Yeah. There you go.
We don't care. We're just going to keep doing it anyway.
Yeah, I know. It's been an awesome pleasure to talk to you, Dave, and get to know you and the music. Like I said, when I first discovered the music, 10, 12 years ago, I never thought I'd be talking to one of the guys who made it and getting the story out there. Usually these things are like, I come to the party too late. I find the music after the bands have broken up, and at that time it was kind of true, but at least now getting people to check out your band and what you got going on, and just spreading the word about White Trash and getting people to, enjoy it.
Well, we really appreciate it, and, thanks for having me on.
Thank you again for doing this. You have a good night, okay?
All right, awesome. Nice meeting you, man.
Once again, my big thanks to Dave for doing this interview and having a long chat. We had a good conversation, I do believe, and can't wait to do it again when they get back out there with more shows and new music, like he mentioned, they're working on. So I can't wait to see what comes up with that. And I'm sure you can't wait as well. Don't forget to support the band going over to White Trash Universe over on Facebook, as well as White Trash Universe at bandcamp.com. And you can buy merchandise. There's not much available there. Most of the things have sold out. I mean, that's a good sign. That's a lot of people have interest in the band, buying their stuff and supporting them. And that's very important in this time, especially when tours are just, starting to come back. At least in America, things are starting to open up. They've announced some shows I think they have coming up in Queens, where they're based. You can check those out over on the White Trash Universe Facebook page. Don't forget to do that. Self-promotion for me, don't forget to like Nobodies radio station, Heavy Rock Radio on Facebook, Paradise City, your 80s rock and talk show where we play White Trash. Don't forget to like that over on Facebook, and Nobodies are Somebodies podcast for all the goings on and more content coming up. More interviews, can't wait. Hope you check it out. Hope you enjoy it. For Dave, thank you so much again. Have a good, safe, happy week, everybody, and I'll catch you with another brand new episode next week on Nobodies or Somebodies podcast, or right here on Nobodies radio station, Heavy Rock Radio. Chad Weiss out. You've been listening to the Nobodies Are Somebodies podcast with me, Chad Weiss, sharing real people with real stories. And this podcast has been voted the #1 podcast by people that don't vote.